Echelon Prime hung in the dark, silent void of space like a jewel encased in glass. The massive station, shaped like a ring with towering structures built along its inner and outer walls, slowly rotated around the cold, dead star Rylos. It was the heart of the Neutral Systems Council, where the galaxy's 5 great factions gathered to keep peace. At least, that was the idea. Inside one of the highest towers, in a grand chamber lined with curved glass walls showing the stars beyond, hundreds of diplomats and representatives sat in a circular hall. In the center stood the speaker's platform, where the current session dragged on. Ambassador Leon Vance sat in his assigned seat, dressed in the sharp black and silver uniform of the Human Terran Union. His dark hair showed hints of gray at the sides. His face, usually calm and unreadable, today showed small cracks of frustration. He had been listening for hours as the Virexi Dominion's delegates spoke in their cold, flat voices about peaceful cooperation and mutual trust. He didn't believe a word of it. Across the hall, sitting tall and motionless on her throne-like seat, was Supreme Chancellor Verizal of the Virexi Dominion. She wore the shining purple battle robes of her people. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes black as deep space. She watched Leon with a slight smile, as if amused by the whole meeting. Leon knew that smile. It wasn't the smile of peace. It was the smile of someone who had already made up their mind. And so, we propose a review of all border security stations to ease tension along the Terran-Virexi frontier, one of the Virexi ministers said smoothly. Leon leaned back in his seat, fighting the urge to speak out. This was the 3rd session this month. Every proposal from a Virexi side sounded reasonable on the surface, but they all worked in one direction, making humanity weaker. It was clear to Leon that Verizal was buying time. He glanced down at the small data pad on his wrist. A blinking green light signaled an incoming message. He tapped it quietly, bringing the words onto his lens implant, hidden from view. Eyes only, from Human Intelligence Command. His heart tightened as he read the decrypted report. Confirmed movement. Virexi's 7th and 9th fleets gathering near Zora's Reach. Estimated force, 500 capital ships. Zora's Reach. That was the border nearest to Earth's outer colonies. Leon's hands clenched into fists under the table. This wasn't just a routine patrol. This was a war fleet. He looked up slowly, locking eyes with Verizal. Her smile grew slightly wider, as if she somehow knew what message he had just received. Leon felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had to be careful. If he acted without proof, the Council would accuse him of pushing for war. But if he stayed silent, humanity might not survive the next cycle. The Council speaker, a thin Zanari with glassy white skin, tapped the end of his long staff. The Terran Union may now respond. Leon stood, adjusting his jacket. His voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. "We have heard many words today," Leon began, letting his eyes move slowly around the hall. "But I remind this council that words without action are meaningless." Several delegates shifted in their seats. Verizal kept smiling. Leon continued, "The Terran Union remains committed to peace. But peace must be based on truth, not on clever words meant to hide darker intentions." The Virexi minister stood at once. Ambassador Vance insults the Council and the Dominion with these baseless suggestions. Leon raised a hand. "I suggest nothing. I only warn that peace is fragile. If it breaks, we all pay the price." The hall fell silent for a moment. Then the Council speaker nodded. "Noted. This session will continue tomorrow. We stand adjourned." Leon left the hall quickly, ignoring the looks from other delegates. He walked down the long glass corridor, the stars spinning slowly outside. His mind raced. He needed more proof, something the Council could not ignore. As he entered the private human sector of the station, his wrist pad buzzed again. A message from Admiral Kalen, waiting for him in the restricted command lounge. Leon's jaw tightened. If the Admiral had come all the way to Echelon Prime, the situation was worse than he thought. He glanced once more out the glass wall toward the Virexi fleet docked on the far side of the station. Massive ships, dark and sharp like blades, hovered in perfect formation. Soldiers marched on their docking bays. Leon felt the storm building, and he knew peace was already broken. Leon moved quickly through the long, dim corridors of Echelon Prime's restricted sectors. The public areas of the station were bright and polished, designed to impress visitors with their size and beauty. But here, deep in the secured levels, everything felt colder. The walls were bare gray metal. The air smelled of engine oil and recycled oxygen. Security drones hovered silently in the corners, scanning all who passed. Leon showed his security clearance at every checkpoint. No one stopped him. They knew who he was. The highest-ranking human on Echelon Prime, the face of human diplomacy. But tonight, he wasn't here as a diplomat. He was here as a man preparing for the worst. He finally reached the door to the human command lounge. Two soldiers stood guard in full combat armor. They stepped aside without a word. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside stood Admiral Kalen. Kalen was taller than Leon, with sharp blue eyes and a square jaw. His gray uniform carried the rank of Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Fleet. He had fought in the Blood War a decade ago. Leon trusted him more than anyone else in the galaxy. Kalen turned as the door closed behind Leon. "You got my message?" Leon nodded. "I read it. I need to see it for myself." Without wasting time, Kalen walked to the center of the room where a large hollow table displayed a full map of the known galaxy. He tapped a control, zooming in on the outer human territories. Dozens of red markers appeared along the border near Zora's Reach. "These are the Virexi fleets we've tracked over the last month," Kalen said in a low voice. "We intercepted encrypted signals 2 days ago, confirming their orders. They're preparing for a full invasion." Leon felt his throat tighten. He leaned closer to study the fleet formation. It wasn't just one or two groups. It was an entire war force. "How reliable is this intel?" Leon asked quietly. Kalen looked him in the eye. 100%. We used deep infiltration units. The Virexi aren't even trying to hide it anymore. They know the Council won't act." Leon turned away from the table, rubbing his face with both hands. The weight of responsibility pressed hard on his shoulders. Millions of lives were at risk. He had sworn an oath to protect humanity through peace, not war. But peace was becoming impossible. Kalen stepped closer. "We have a narrow window, Leon. If we strike first, we might have a chance to hold them back. But if we wait..." Leon raised a hand to stop him. "I know." Silence filled the room. Leon stared at the glowing map, thinking through every possible outcome. He couldn't act alone. The Council would accuse humanity of breaking the peace treaty. Other factions might turn against them. But if he did nothing, the Virexi would strike when humanity was weakest. He finally spoke, his voice heavy. "We need proof. Proof the Council can't deny." Kalen nodded slowly. "I thought you'd say that." He tapped the console again, bringing up a new data file. It showed video feeds, Virexi warships arming weapons, loading ground assault units, and deploying heavy cruisers. The date and location codes were clear. It was happening now, right at the edge of human space. Leon watched every second. His chest felt tight, but his mind cleared. This was the proof they needed. But would the Council care? He doubted it. Too many factions had made secret deals with the Virexi over the years. Most of them feared the Virexi more than they respected humanity. Leon knew the Council preferred to ignore problems until it was too late. Still, he had to try. It was the only way to justify what might come next. Leon turned to Kalen. "Prepare the fleet, but do nothing yet. I'll bring this to the Council tomorrow." Kalen gave a sharp nod. "Understood." Leon started to leave, but paused at the door. "If they refuse to act, we move without them." Kalen's voice was firm. "We'll be ready." Leon walked out, feeling the cold steel of the station walls pressing on him. The hallway seemed longer than before. His steps felt heavier. He didn't want this. He had spent his life trying to keep humanity from fighting another war. But the choice was being ripped from his hands. As he reached the end of the corridor, his wrist pad buzzed again. Another message. This one was marked private, from Verizal. His jaw tightened as he opened it. There was no text, only a single image. It showed a Virexi fleet in full battle formation, the ships casting long shadows over a human colony world. The message was clear, even without words. Verizal was mocking him. She knew he had seen the truth, and she didn't care. Leon stared at the image for a long moment before deleting it. He walked back toward the main sectors of the station, his mind already preparing for the battle ahead. The diplomatic chambers on Echelon Prime were alive with soft music and polite laughter. Tall glass towers stretched high above the large, open hall where representatives from every faction gathered for the Night of Unity banquet. The event was meant to celebrate peace across the galaxy. Long tables were covered in silverware and food from dozens of worlds. Servants in white uniforms moved quietly among the guests. But Leon Vance felt none of the joy the others pretended to share. He stood at the edge of the hall, watching the powerful figures of the galaxy mingle. His mind was still on the data Admiral Kalen had shown him, the Virexi fleets preparing for war. Every smile he saw tonight felt like a lie. Every handshake felt forced. He knew the Council would continue to ignore the threat. The other factions were too afraid of losing their trade deals, too blind to see the storm building at their door. Leon's eyes moved to the far end of the hall. There she was, Supreme Chancellor Verizal. She stood alone on a raised platform, her pale blue skin glowing softly under the lights. Her dark eyes watched the crowd with quiet amusement, as if she already knew how this would end. She hadn't even touched the glass of wine in her hand. She didn't need to. Verizal had already won this game. Leon knew he had to face her directly. No more speeches. No more quiet warnings. He had to hear the truth from her own lips. He crossed the hall with steady steps, ignoring the curious looks from other delegates. Some moved aside as he passed. Others whispered to each other. He climbed the steps to the platform and stood before her. "Chancellor," he said, keeping his voice calm. Verizal turned to him with a small smile. "Ambassador Vance, what a pleasant surprise. Have you come to finally toast to peace?" Leon didn't smile. "I asked to speak with you privately." Her smile widened, showing sharp white teeth. "Very well. Follow me." She turned without waiting for his reply and led him through a side door into a private viewing chamber. The walls were clear glass, showing the endless stars outside. The room was empty, silent except for the hum of the station's power systems. Verizal faced the glass, hands folded behind her back. "I assume you bring more warnings of war." Leon stepped closer. "I bring the truth. We have seen your fleets. We know they are gathering near Zora's reach. You are preparing to break the treaty." Vera tilted her head slightly, but didn't turn around. "Treaties are only words, Ambassador. Words mean nothing without power to enforce them." Leon's jaw tightened. "Why? After all these years of peace, why throw it all away?" Vera finally turned to face him. The smile was gone. Her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "Because you are weak." Leon's breath caught in his throat, but she didn't stop. Humans were a mistake. A species that spread too fast and too far. You build fragile colonies, call yourselves a union, and pretend you belong among the true powers of the galaxy. But you are not worthy of this place. Leon stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. "We held the line in the Blood War. We survived when others fell." Vera's dark eyes narrowed. "And you should have fallen. We have waited long enough. Your colonies will burn. Your fleets will break. Humanity will be erased from the stars, and the Dominion will rise." Leon's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his face steady. "The Council won't allow it." Vera gave a cold laugh. "The Council is already mine. They fear us more than they trust you. They will sit and talk until it is too late, just as you're doing now." Leon felt the walls closing in. Everything he feared was true. Diplomacy was over. Vera had played him, played the Council, and now the blade was ready to fall. Still, he forced himself to ask, what if you're wrong? What if humanity fights back? Vera stepped close, her face only inches from his. Her voice was low and full of dark promise. "Then you will all die screaming." Leon held her gaze for a long moment. There was nothing left to say. He turned and walked out of the room without looking back. He moved quickly through the empty corridors, pushing past anyone who tried to stop him. The faces around him blurred. The music from the banquet echoed faintly behind him, sounding distant and meaningless. As he reached the human sector, his wrist pad buzzed again. Another message from Admiral Kalen. Status. Leon stopped in the middle of the hallway, his hands shaking slightly. He took a deep breath and replied with 2 words. Prepare everything. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the cold steel wall ahead. Vera had made her position clear. The Council would never act. The galaxy had abandoned humanity. But humanity would not go quietly. Leon turned and walked toward the command sector, ready to do what had to be done. The next day came faster than Leon expected. He didn't sleep. There was no time. His mind raced through every detail, every risk. By morning, he was ready to make his final move. The council chamber was crowded again. Delegates from every faction filled their seats. Some talked quietly. Some looked bored, as if today's session was no different from the others. But to Leon, today was everything. Today, he would either save humanity or stand alone against the galaxy. The speaker called the session to order. The Terran Union has called for an emergency declaration. Ambassador Leon Vance, you may proceed. Leon stood, holding a small data tablet in his hand. He looked around the wide chamber. Every eye was on him. He cleared his throat and spoke in a clear, firm voice. I stand before this council not as a negotiator, but as a defender of my people. I bring proof of a great betrayal. The hall grew quiet. The side walls dimmed, and a large holographic display appeared in the air above the speaker's platform. Leon pressed a button on his tablet. The council watched as images and recordings filled the air. Virexi warships gathering at the border, weapons loading, ground forces preparing for attack. The data was clear. The time code showed it all happening now, not months ago, not years ago now. Murmurs spread through the hall. Leon turned to face them all. You see the truth. The Virexi Dominion prepares for war while sitting at this table pretending to seek peace. They have broken the treaty. If we do nothing, humanity will fall. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then he looked directly at the speaker. The Terran Union demands this council take immediate action. We call for full sanctions against the Dominion. We call for all members to prepare their fleets. We call for the defense of peace, not with words, but with action. The chamber fell silent again. The speaker leaned forward, his pale white face unreadable. Supreme Chancellor Verazal, do you have a response? Vera stood slowly. She didn't even look at Leon. Her face showed no fear, no anger, only cold amusement. I reject these accusations. The Terran Union fears its own shadow. We move ships within our space. That is our right. We seek only to protect our people from Terran aggression. A few delegates nodded, clearly eager to believe or lie. Others shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. Leon's heart pounded. Do you deny these images? He demanded. Vera gave a small, mocking smile. I deny your fear. The speaker struck the staff once on the floor. The council will now vote on the Terran Union's demands. Leon stood tall, hiding the fear rising in his chest. The vote began. One by one, the factions cast their decisions. The Zanari Collective abstain. The Dravik Horde oppose. The Neutral Systems Council oppose. Leon's fist tightened. The Virexi Dominion oppose. And finally, the speaker turned to Leon. The Terran Union support. 4 against 1. The speaker stood and announced the result. The motion is denied. The council will not intervene. The hall erupted in noise. Delegates stood, talking loudly, arguing among themselves. But Leon didn't hear any of it. His heart felt like it had stopped. It was over. The council had betrayed humanity. Leon stood frozen for a moment, the weight of their decision crushing him. He looked once more toward Verazal. She sat calmly, her smile as sharp as a blade. She had won, but only for now. Leon turned and left the chamber without a word. He walked quickly through the empty halls until he reached the secure human command lounge where Kalen waited. It's done, Leon said quietly. The council has abandoned us. Kalen didn't look surprised. He stood and handed Leon a secure communication tablet. The fleet stands ready for your order. Leon took the tablet. His hands felt heavy, but his voice was steady. Send the command. Prepare all fleets. Recall all patrol units. Secure the colonies. We are on our own. Kalen nodded. And the council? Leon stared at the dark screen for a long moment. Then he spoke with quiet finality. Humanity withdraws from the peace accords. From this moment forward, the Terran Union stands alone. Kalen tapped the command code, sealing the order. Leon took a deep breath and walked toward the communications room. He stood before the large hollow projector, knowing the whole galaxy would hear his next words. He activated the channel. This is Ambassador Leon Vance of the Terran Union. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all council agreements. The Virexi Dominion has broken the peace. We will not wait for our worlds to burn. He paused, feeling the weight of what he was about to say. We declare full defense mobilization. We declare total war. The message ended. Leon stood alone in the silent room, staring into the dark. He knew what would come next. Millions would suffer. Planets would fall. Blood would be spilled on every side. But there was no other path left. It was war. The order spread fast. Across the stars, every human fleet, colony, and station received the command. Mobilize. Prepare for war. The peace accords were over. For the first time in 10 years, the sirens of war echoed across human space. On Echelon Prime, the announcement hit like a shockwave. Delegates rushed to their ships. Reporters flooded communication channels with questions. The council called for emergency talks, but Leon ignored them all. He had played their game long enough. Now, he had to protect his people. Leon stood on the docking platform as the Resolute Dawn, humanity's largest warship, finished its final checks. The massive vessel stretched nearly 3 kilometers long, its armored hull lined with weapon batteries, fighter bays, and shield generators. It was the pride of the human defense fleet. Admiral Kalen stood beside him, helmet tucked under his arm. The fleet is moving to defensive positions near Zora's Reach, Kalen reported. We'll be ready when they come. Leon nodded. He stared at the distant stars beyond the docking shield. Somewhere out there, Verizal's fleets were already in motion. He knew they wouldn't wait long. We leave now, Leon said quietly. Kalen nodded and signaled the bridge crew. The Resolute Dawn hummed to life. Its engines glowed bright blue as it lifted from the platform. Leon followed Kalen aboard, walking through the long steel corridors until they reached the command bridge. The bridge was alive with officers at their stations, screens glowing with fleet positions, energy readings, and incoming reports. The main window showed open space ahead. Status? Kalen asked. Fleet groups Echo and Delta have formed a line at Zora's Reach, the operations officer replied. No contact yet, but we're picking up movement on long-range scans. Leon moved to the center of the bridge. He stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of his choice settle on him like a mountain. He had spent years keeping humanity out of another war. Now he had started one. But if the price of peace was extinction, then peace was worthless. Set course for Zora's Reach, Leon ordered. The Resolute Dawn turned toward the border. The fleet followed, hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation. Fighters launched from the carriers, patrolling the edges of the formation like wolves guarding a herd. As the fleet traveled, reports from human colonies started pouring in. Governors confirmed they were reinforcing shields and evacuating civilians to deep shelters. Trade ships rushed to get clear before the war reached them. The whole Terran Union was on high alert. Leon stood on the bridge for hours without leaving. His mind replayed Verizal's words over and over. You will all die screaming. He pushed the memory aside. He couldn't afford fear now. Suddenly, the sensor officer called out. Admiral, long-range contact. Multiple Virexi signatures entering human space. Kalen's voice was sharp. How many? The officer's face turned pale. Too many to count, sir. It's the entire invasion fleet. Leon felt his throat tighten. It had begun. Put on a main screen, he ordered. The screen flickered and zoomed in. Dozens, no, hundreds, of Virexi warships filled the blackness. Massive cruisers, heavy carriers, and swarms of smaller attack ships. They moved like a living wall, pushing straight for the human defense line. Kalen clenched his fists. They're coming straight for Zora's Reach. Leon's mind raced. If the Virexi broke through there, Earth's outer colonies would fall in days. There was no choice. He turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to all fleet commanders. The officer nodded. Channel open. Leon took a breath and spoke. This is Ambassador Leon Vance. You have all heard the Council's silence. You have seen the threat with your own eyes. This is not just a fight for our colonies. This is a fight for the future of our people. Hold the line. No retreat. No surrender. Fight for every world. Fight for humanity. He ended the channel and turned to Kalen. Take us to battle. Kalen gave the order. The resolute Dawn surged forward, leading the fleet towards Zora's Reach. The battle began before they even reached the front lines. Virexi attack ships broke through the edges of the defense grid, forcing human ships to engage early. Explosions lit up the darkness as the two fleets clashed. On the bridge, officers shouted updates as ships took damage and returned fire. Human fighters raced between the giants, launching missile strikes and firing plasma cannons. The Virexi moved with deadly precision, their ships cutting through the defense lines like blades through cloth. Leon stood firm, watching the battle unfold in real time. Every loss felt like a knife in his chest, but he didn't flinch. He couldn't. Hours passed like minutes. The battle stretched across the stars. Human ships fought with everything they had, but the Virexi numbers were overwhelming. Kalen stepped beside Leon, his voice low. We're holding for now, but we can't hold forever. Leon nodded slowly. Then we fight until we can't fight anymore. He knew this was just the beginning. More battles would come. More lives would be lost. But humanity would not fall quietly. They would stand. They would fight. And they would show the Virexi that humans never gave up. The stars above Zora's Reach burned with fire. Human and Virexi warships filled the void in a massive wave of destruction. Laser blasts cut through the dark. Explosions flared like dying suns. The noise of it all, heard only through the ship's systems, roared across the resolute Dawn's command bridge. Leon stood at the front of the bridge, his face hard as stone. The human defense fleet was fighting with everything it had. But the Virexi were pushing harder. For every Virexi ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Left flank collapsing, an officer shouted. Delta wing requesting backup, another called. Shields dropping on the Iron Talon. She's going down. The fleet was breaking apart. Admiral Kalen stood beside Leon, shouting new orders. Fighters launched from the resolute Dawn, racing to cover the falling wings. But they were stretched too thin. Send reinforcements to the left flank, Kalen ordered. Sir, there are no more reinforcements. We've committed all ships. Leon's stomach tightened. He stared at the main display. Red markers, Virexi ships, were pushing through the defense wall. Soon, they would reach the outer colonies. Millions of lives were at risk. Status on civilian evacuation? Leon asked. Still ongoing, Kalen replied. But if we lose this line, they won't make it. Leon's hands curled into fists. This was what Verizal wanted. She didn't come for peace. She came to crush humanity in a single, unstoppable blow. He turned to Kalen. Pull the fleet back, just enough to regroup. Kalen's eyes widened. We'll lose ground. We already are, Leon snapped. Fall back, form a tighter line, and make them come closer. Kalen nodded and gave the order. The fleet shifted positions, pulling back toward the colony defense platforms. Virexi ships surged forward, chasing the retreat. But now, they were closer to the colony guns, massive turrets mounted on orbiting defense stations. Activate all colony platforms. Leon ordered. The space around the colonies lit up as giant plasma cannons opened fire. Virexi ships exploded one after another as the platforms unleashed everything they had. Human ships regrouped around the platforms, adding their firepower to the defense. The Virexi push slowed, but only for a moment. New contacts incoming, the sensor officer shouted. Heavy cruisers, Virexi dreadnoughts. Leon felt the blood drain from his face. Dreadnoughts were the Dominion's largest warships, floating fortresses bristling with weapons. Target those ships with all long-range weapons, Kalen ordered. Missiles and plasma blasts streaked toward the incoming giants. The first dreadnought took heavy hits, but kept moving. It returned fire with massive energy cannons, cutting through two human destroyers like paper. On the bridge, officers shouted updates faster than Leon could process. Ships were falling on both sides. The battlefield was chaos. A message came through on the main channel. "This is Captain Riva of the Nightblade. We're surrounded. We're taking heavy damage." The signal cut out. Leon felt the weight of every life lost pressing down on him. He knew the numbers. Humanity couldn't win in a straight fight. They didn't have the numbers. But they had something the Virexi never understood: determination. He turned to Kalen. "Prepare the Resolute Dawn for a direct assault." Kalen's head snapped toward him. "Leon, if we move forward alone, we won't make it back." Leon nodded slowly. "I know." Kalen stared at him for a moment, then gave a grim nod. "I'll ready the crew." Leon stood at the center of the bridge, looking around at every officer, every soldier. "We hold the line here, or we lose everything. Prepare to push." The crew moved quickly, checking systems, locking in weapons. The Resolute Dawn turned toward the largest Virexi dreadnought. "All engines full power," Kalen ordered. The ships surged forward, breaking through the defense wall. Virexi ships turned to face them, but the Resolute Dawn fired everything it had: missiles, lasers, plasma cannons. Enemy ships exploded in their path as they pushed deeper toward the dreadnought. "Direct hit on the dreadnought's shield generator," the weapons officer shouted. Leon leaned forward. "Target the main reactor. Fire all remaining missiles." The Resolute Dawn fired its last barrage. The missile struck deep into the dreadnought's hull. For a moment, the giant ship hung in space, burning but still standing. Then it exploded. The shockwave rocked the Resolute Dawn, sending alarms screaming through the ship. Systems failed. Lights flickered. The bridge shook as fires broke out on the lower decks. "Structural damage. Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, an officer shouted. "Seal those decks." Kalen barked. The crew fought to keep the ship alive as more Virexi ships closed in. Leon gripped the edge of the command platform. He knew they couldn't hold much longer. But he had bought them time. He had stalled the Virexi long enough for more civilian ships to escape. That had to be enough. He looked at Kalen. "Get us out of the kill zone. Regroup with the fleet." Kalen nodded. "Helm, turn us around. All engines now." The Resolute Dawn limped back toward the human lines, smoke and fire trailing from its damaged hull. But they weren't finished yet. The human fleet, inspired by their charge, pushed back harder. Colony platforms continued firing. Fighters swarmed enemy ships like angry wasps. The battle raged on. Leon stood in the middle of it all, knowing this was only the beginning. He had declared total war, and now the galaxy was burning. But humanity still stood. And as long as they stood, the fight was not over. The battle at Zora's Reach raged for 2 more days. The human defense fleet held the line, though barely. Wreckage of ships, both human and Virexi, floated in the dead silence of space. Burned metal and shattered hulls stretched for thousands of kilometers. The once clear path to Earth's outer colonies had become a graveyard. But humanity still stood. The Resolute Dawn drifted among the wreckage, her hull scorched and torn, but alive. Crews worked day and night to patch systems, seal broken decks, and bring the engines back online. On the bridge, the air smelled of burnt circuits and sweat. Officers worked in silence, their faces pale and tired, but focused. Leon Vance stood at the front window, staring at the empty space beyond. His face showed every hour of the long battle. His body felt heavier than ever before, but his eyes burned with purpose. Admiral Kalen approached quietly. "The Virexi have pulled back, for now," Kalen reported. Leon didn't move. "Casualties?" Kalen took a slow breath. "We lost nearly half the fleet. Colony defense platforms are still holding, but they're damaged. Civilian losses, we don't know yet." Leon closed his eyes. He knew the price would be high. He had prepared himself for this moment. But hearing it, feeling it was something else. He finally turned to face Kalen. "And the council?" Kalen handed him a small datapad. "They sent a message, but not to us. They've opened new talks with the Virexi Dominion. They're asking for peace talks without human representation. Leon felt something inside him crack. After all that had happened, after all the blood that had been spilled, the Council was still trying to protect themselves. They didn't care about humanity. They never had. Leon placed the pad on the console. He didn't need to read the message. He already knew the truth. "We're alone," he said quietly. Kalen nodded. "We've always been alone." Leon looked around the bridge. He saw the faces of every officer, every soldier who had stood with him. They had chosen to fight, not because they were ordered to, but because they believed humanity deserved a future. He walked to the communication station. "Open a channel to all human worlds," Leon ordered. The officer nodded and activated the broadcast. Leon stood tall, knowing this message would reach every colony, every ship, every soldier still standing. "This is Ambassador Leon Vance," he began. His voice was steady, but carried the weight of every life lost. "The Council has abandoned us. The Virexi Dominion will not stop. The battle at Zora's Reach was only the beginning." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But we are still here. We still stand. The Terran Union lives." He leaned forward slightly, his voice sharper now. "We will not kneel. We will not surrender. We will fight for every world, every city, every life. We will show the galaxy that humanity is not weak. We are strong. We are united." Across the stars, humans listened. On warships, in bunkers, on colonies hidden deep in the void. They heard his words and knew what they had to do. Leon ended the broadcast and turned to Kalen. "Prepare the fleet for redeployment. We move to protect the next colony line." Kalen nodded. "Understood." Leon knew this war would not end quickly. He knew more blood would be spilled. But he also knew something deeper now. Humanity would not fall easily. The Dominion had underestimated them. The Council had betrayed them. But they were still standing. And they would keep standing no matter the cost. Hours later, another message arrived. This time it was direct. A live transmission from Vera Zal herself. Leon accepted the call. Her face appeared on the cracked screen. "Calm. Cold. Certain. You delayed the inevitable, Ambassador," she said. "Your people will burn." Leon stepped closer to the screen. His voice was firm, filled with quiet defiance. "We tried peace. You refused it. Now we fight. And we will fight until the last star burns out." Vera's smile faded. For the first time, Leon saw something new in her eyes, uncertainty. The transmission cut. Leon turned away from the screen. He walked to the front of the bridge, staring out into the vast darkness. The war had only just begun, but humanity had chosen to stand, and they would stand until the end.